Evening, Fremont Unified School District community. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening. Thank you for joining our town hall. We want to welcome any of our students, any of our staff, parents, guardians, and community at large to this event. We're going to be talking about the things that have happened in recent months for Fremont Unified and things that are coming in the near future for Fremont Unified. Thank you for taking the time to be involved and be a part of our evening and our school district. We'll be starting with some introductions, talking about our support for students, some of our financial conditions, and other ways that you can join us. As we start with introductions, as many of you may know, each year, our school board reorganizes itself through an internal process, which happens at a public meeting where we select a new board president and vice president. This year, this aligns with more of the calendar year. So at the last board meeting, Trustee Diane Jones was elected as the new board president. Trustee Vivek Prasad was elected as the new board vice president. Trustee Yajing Zhang was elected as the clerk. And Trustee Campbell and Trustee Sweeney both remain members of the board. And we have our student trustee, Tushar Dalmia. And our student trustee was actually attending a professional development conference with us just a few weeks ago in San Diego with members of our school board. And we were very proud to have a student board member as part of that process, making sure that Fremont Unified is including the voice of students in our governance team and in the decisions that we're making. Additionally, a brief introduction of our executive cabinet. Myself, CJ Kamek, I'm the superintendent for the district. We also have our associate superintendent, Nancy Torres Pfeiffer, and we have our assistant superintendent who's unable to be with us this evening, Ms. Leticia Salinas. It's also my great pleasure to introduce our new assistant superintendent of human resources, Mr. Zach Larson. And as you may know, Mr. Larson has been an integral part of Fremont Unified and our Fremont community for 20 plus years. We're thrilled to have Mr. Larson joining our executive team from his role as a director of secondary ed, and before that, where he was previously the principal of Mission San Jose High School. As we look at Fremont Unified School District on a broad context, we are nearly 34,000 students in our school district. That maintains us as one of the 25 largest districts across the entire state of California. And with that, you would expect and understand that we have a large number of employees. At nearly 3,300 employees within Fremont Unified, I believe we're currently Fremont's second largest employer, and we're grateful to have such a significant part of our community joining us on a daily basis, whether it's as a student, as a parent or guardian, or as an employee. As you can see, our mission remains strong towards educating, challenging, and inspiring our students. Here, thanks to the work of many and the cooperation of our students, our parents and guardians, and our staff, we were able to reopen our schools and return to in-person instruction. And in doing so, we provided two options for students. Okay, sorry, I'm being told that we might have lost sound. Okay, thank you. In returning to campus, we were able to provide two options. One was a full return to in-person instruction. The other was a virtual instructional program. For the in-person instructional program, we had about 95% of our students elect to return fully in person. As you can then see, the remaining 5% of our student population enrolled in our virtual instruction. Our virtual elementary program experienced significant growth this summer along with the Delta variant, and we were very grateful to be able to offer such a rich program. For the secondary level, our virtual program is embedded within our Vista program, which was pre-existing, and we're very happy to provide students both options for an educational setting. A large part of our return to in-person instruction were our safety protocols. You can see on the screen in front of you that Fremont Unified has a comprehensive school safety plan, as well as a number of mitigating measures and they are all aligned with Alameda County Public Health and California Department of Public Health guidelines. A few key points for review, masking being one of them. The guidelines have always mandated that we mask when inside a school setting. Fremont Unified has taken that one step further to remain masked indoors and outdoors. Also, physical distancing remains something that we pay attention to, but it is worth noting that that's been a large transition from our original thinking of 6 feet, even to 3 feet, versus being physically distant when practicable. Additionally, very, very grateful to have such a broad testing program in place within Fremont Unified. We are currently offering PCR testing for students and staff at every school site and every work location in Fremont Unified School District. Additionally, we have testing available each and every day, except for Saturdays and Sundays, at the Fremont Unified School District district office. Additionally, we're reporting our cases on our website. We're tracking a 14-day average as well as cumulative totals. That allows us to see what's going on historically, as well as to see what's going on in the current window. Additionally, with our contact tracing team, we are working quickly to identify close contacts whenever there is a case. We also send out notices to the impacted school staff and to the school community as a whole, and we try and get into direct one-to-one contact with anybody who may be a close contact to a positive case. All of those provisions and many, many others have allowed us to return to school as safely as possible. As we've said the whole time, as long as COVID exists within our community, our schools can't operate in a complete vacuum. And so we will see in our schools what we see in our community. But our mitigation strategies have been comprehensive, and I think we're doing a good job thanks to the efforts of our students and our staff, the cooperation of our community to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. And with that, that's allowed us to return to school. And you can see the pictures on this slide, the many exciting faces, whether it's some of our staff at the bottom right at Cabrillo, or many of our students engaged, whether it's in extracurricular activities such as band, or this was a picture from the Irvington football game that I was at, or our students in and out of the classroom. So far this year, I've conducted about 36 site visits, and I've been so impressed with how well our students have adapted to their new structures and the policies and procedures related to existing with education and the pandemic concurrently. So I've been very grateful, even for our youngest students, how cooperative they've been with the needed adjustments. One of the things that has come up as a question that I want to address in regards to our safety structure, and I should have covered this on the prior screen, so my apologies. But when we talk about our safety plan, I do want to remind anybody who's watching our town hall that we do have regularly scheduled cleaning that takes place, but it's important to note that that cleaning may look and feel different than pre-pandemic times. We've asked our staff to focus on the sanitizing and cleaning of high-touch surfaces, which means that some other aspects of our day-to-day cleaning may not be getting as much attention. For example, the area that is usually vacuumed more regularly may, in some circumstances, be vacuumed a little bit less because attention is being pointed towards trying to make sure that our surfaces are sanitized. Now, we know there's been a lot of learning that's taken place since the beginning of the pandemic till now in the understanding of how COVID is spread, and the transmissibility of that through surfaces is much less than we originally thought back in March and April of 2020, but still a very important consideration. As we go through the presentation, we have asked the community to send us questions, and so as we go through, I'll try and highlight where those questions have come up and address those as we go through. Other questions that have come up is related to the new mask mandate that is across the entire state from December 15th through January 15th. In that regard, I'm happy to share that that really won't have any significant impact for Fremont Unified for two reasons. One, we already had stricter mask requirements within school settings. And two, the state mandate provides that any county which already had a indoor and outdoor mask mandate in place can retain the one that they had in place. So both Alameda County as a whole and Fremont Unified should see very little change based on the new state requirement. Shifting back to our return of students to campus, we knew coming out of the pandemic and after an entire school year and even a third of the prior year where students were in distance learning, that more support and more intensive programming would be needed to meet the needs of our students where they were at. We did this through a few different things, and we continue to work on this. One of them at the elementary level is a multi-tiered system of support, which we refer to as MTSS. That could be an entire workshop on its own, but to give you a brief summary, MTSS is a tiered system, academic and behavioral or social emotional needs for students. Tier 1 of the MTSS pyramid is things that are generally happening across the entire campus or within most classrooms. Then we look at Tier 2 and Tier 3 as a smaller subsection of students who may need more intensified levels of support. Additionally, at the secondary level, we've increased our focus on restorative practices. We've also increased our focus on social emotional learning curriculum, especially at the elementary level. Some questions that have come up around that from our community. There was a question about what restorative practice training we might be using. And so our training and curriculum program is provided by the International Institute for Restorative Practices. And we offer all secondary teachers access to a 2-day training on restorative practices before this school year. And we'll continue to offer training opportunities during the summer break and even perhaps during the spring. Additionally, in a number of schools, we've also expanded our PBIS programs, which is Positive Behavior Intervention Systems. And the PBIS programs have been very helpful in supporting the work of our students and our staff as well. Lastly, on the social emotional learning curriculum, we have also focused greatly on that as a way to help our students not only have greater acuity to the social emotional awareness and development, but to help them process many of the challenges coming out of distance learning and reintegrating into a comprehensive social setting. We also were able to increase counseling services at the elementary level, and we retain our cost referral process. The elementary increase in counseling services, and in some cases at the secondary level as well, we were able to increase. Those were due to the significant one-time funding that we received from the state and the federal government. And as our students came back to campus, some of them came back to new places and new supports, new safety protocols. Some of them came back to campuses that remained under construction, and in some cases, such as Hopkins, to temporary locations. And so we're going to talk about where we are with some of our facilities work. And that is a very exciting topic because we have many things happening across Fremont Unified School District. Our community has graciously supported Measure E. As you recall, that passed in 2014. If you're not familiar with that, that's a $650 million general obligation bond initiative. If you're not familiar with the general obligation bond process, that means that the $650 million is provided through the support of our community, and those funds are restricted to ensuring that they are all spent on the facility upgrades and improvements aligned with the ballot language that was passed by the voters in 2014. That work will be ongoing through 2025, and we have some key drivers that guide that work. One of them being our long-range facilities plan recommendations, and those are informed by a review of our demographics, which we'll talk about a little bit later, our ongoing facilities needs assessments, our financial condition across the district through our bond funds, our other facilities funds and our general funds, as well as what our educational standards are. What is it that we want to see in our classrooms for our staff and our students as we renovate a classroom? And those may change over time, but that's why it's an ongoing process. Within that process, one of the key areas of focus for Measure E was our middle school conversion process. Much of that work happened well before my arrival, but those of you familiar with it will recall that in 2015 to 2017, there was a great amount of focus on planning these transitions from our junior highs, which now will be our middle schools, and serving 6th, 7th, and 8th graders together. As we look at those conversions, we will also continue to work on our long-range facilities planning. That work was set to begin again last spring. We made a collective decision to pause that work as we focused on trying to return to campus. And we are beginning that work again this year now that we've implemented our full return to campus, and we understand that that need is ongoing. Looking further at our conversions, you can see that back in 2019, Walters became our first school to fully convert. And then after the pandemic, we were able to welcome our 6th through 8th graders to our Horner campus. And in the upcoming years, in 2023, we look forward to opening Hopkins, Centerville, and Thornton to the full range of 6th through 8th grade students. You'll see on the screen in front of you a 2022 date for Hopkins, because that's when our 7th and 8th graders will move back to that campus. As we talked about just a moment ago, Hopkins is a school that is temporarily relocated to our Lila Bringhurst site. That was not planned in advance of this year, but due to delays in construction, the site was not quite ready and safe for students and staff to reoccupy in August. We were grateful to utilize the facilities at Lila Bringhurst, and while that school was complete and ready for students, based on the enrollment within the local area, we had not reached a threshold at which yet we would be opening that campus. So we were able to utilize that as a solution to the problem, and I want to again extend my gratitude and thanks to the staff and the students and the families for their flexibility, and of course our transportation team for their help in getting our students from Hopkins to Lila Bringhurst each day. Looking a little closer at the schools, this slide are some great renderings of the Walters Middle School project. On the top left of the screen, you can see the rendering, and on the far right of the screen, you can see the actual completion of the project. I've been to Walters this year, had a great visit, seeing some classrooms, talking with some teachers and some students. I think the facility is really meeting their needs, and we've been very pleased with the outcomes there. For Horner, very pleased to be there a few times this year as well. You can see on the left and the in progress construction that was taking place, and on the right you can see some of the finished pictures. Again, great chance this year to welcome our students and staff to that facility, and also a reminder as we open that facility that even brand new facilities have some issues that need to be worked out, and I appreciate the flexibility of the staff and the work of our SEIU members throughout the district and our outside vendors who helped us address some HVAC issues as we opened up that campus. On this slide, you'll see some renderings of the Hopkins Middle School conversion. On the top right, you'll see a 2-story building rendering, and on the bottom, you'll see some of the actual construction that's taking place. Like our completed middle school conversion projects, this will modernize existing buildings. It constructs some new buildings. It also upgrades utilities, landscaping, fencing, and reconfigures the drop-off. Here are some additional renderings of the Hopkins Middle School conversion. On the left, you can see more renderings of the 2-story buildings, and the bottom right, the elevation of what would be the AB South buildings. And on this slide, again, great opportunity to take a sneak peek inside the construction project. You can see some of the work that's currently taking place. We're very excited for this work to continue and for our Hopkins community to be back at their physical home location of that school as we start next year. The Centerville project also is a great opportunity to thank the staff and the students for their flexibility and cooperation as they are coexisting with the construction that's taking place on their site right now. And you can see in the picture the rendering of the new campus. And this too will modernize existing buildings, create some new buildings, upgrade utilities and landscaping, reconfigure drop off, and provide a new lunch structure. Again, you can see some additional renderings of the campus, the actual progress on the two-story building, and the amount of steel that's already progressed towards the final construction project. This project, not this project, but this presentation will be posted online. So if you want to go back and look at some of these pictures a little more closely, or for example, on this slide, if you want to zoom in a little bit when you get a chance to the diagram on the top right, these slides will be available for you and for your review. And for Thornton Middle School, you can see here a rendering of the front of the campus and what it will look like upon completion. Again, new classroom buildings, parking and drop-off improvements, modernization, IT infrastructure, and playfield improvements as well for Thornton. I've been to Thornton as well this year. I had been to Centerville as well. And those sites have been doing a great job of coexisting with their construction. Again, thank you to the staff and students and families, but also to the members of the construction team that are working day in and day out on the site and for keeping everybody safe. This is an overhead rendering of the Thornton Middle School project once it's finished. And you can also see on this diagram the play fields. And even better, you can see the in-progress construction that's taking place on the Thornton campus right now. And it's probably even progressed a little bit from the time when these pictures were taken. There's a lot happening at that site, and we're grateful that things are happening so quickly there. Future considerations and focus areas for our facilities. We want to look at our long-range facilities plan. That's going to be an important document for any school district, but especially for Fremont Unified. We're going to continue focusing on some high-needs facility areas. For us, that includes a few things which are certainly timely in the moment as well. One of them being roofs and how much we need to make repairs and or replacements to make sure that our staff and students remain safe. And with the weather this week, that's been a great reminder of those needs, even though it's already top on our list. Additionally, with the pandemic, we're continuing to look at outdoor spaces for lunch and other opportunities for our students to be outdoors. Ideally, we would be having students eat outdoors whenever possible to reduce the risk of spreading COVID-19. It is a reminder that the California Department of Public Health and Alameda County Public Health do provide that it is acceptable to eat indoors with masks off when needed. An example, I was at Niles this year during a prior time when it was raining, and that school was doing an excellent job at adjusting their practices to have their students outside as much as they could, but when they needed to be indoors, the students were doing a great job of being physically distanced from each other and pulling down their masks when it was time to eat. When they finished their meal, masking back up and doing what they could to control the spread and mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. Additionally, we want to continue to look at how we can be good stewards of the generous gift provided by our community through Measure E, and making sure that we're enhancing those outcomes for our students, our staff, and our community. Recently, there's been legislation that changed the age eligibility for transitional kindergarten. So we're going to continue to look at how do we expand that. For context and for an example, currently students that are born from September 2nd to December 2nd that are 4 years old, not yet 5, are able to enroll in transitional kindergarten. New legislation at the state level moves that December date back year over year through the school year 25-26. And it moves from December 2nd to the next year, where it'll be February 2nd, then eventually to April 2nd and June 2nd, and all the way back to where it's September 2nd through September 1st. So the expansion of these grades is a great opportunity for us to welcome more students into our transitional kindergarten programs. We're very excited to be doing that. Additionally, while a final decision has not been made and formal action has not been taken, we are looking at considerations for what full-day kindergarten could look like in Fremont Unified School District in the near future. That is an opportunity that we look forward to exploring in greater detail. And as you can imagine, it carries with it many connected outcomes and decisions, both academically, socially, but from a facility standpoint as well. We need to make sure that we have the ability to expand these programs and make sure that we can house all of our students and our staff appropriately. We'll continue watching our middle school conversions and the language immersion programs and their sustainability, their growth. And as you may know, we're in discussions about the locations of those programs and the possibility of uniting them in one location. And we have a task force reviewing those options as we speak, not tonight, but in the current moments. Also, we'll be looking at our remaining bond projects, and we'll be keeping a very close eye on our enrollment projections. So the enrollment projections are critical for Fremont Unified, as they are for every school district across the state, because that's how we are funded within the state of California. The map that you're seeing in front of you now is about an attendance trend from 2018 through 2021, and the state map is divided by each county. The deeper the shade of the red that you see, the larger their decrease in enrollment has been. So as you can see on the bottom of the slide, the deepest red reflects a negative 5% enrollment trend. And across the state, you can only see one county in the very top northern part of California that is blue. So across the state, we're declining in enrollment. I believe this will be the first time across California that we actually have a decrease in the number of students year over year. And that is significant because while I don't like to connect students to a monetary value, the funding system for the state of California and our school system equates that directly, because we are funded on our enrollment, but not just the total number of students. We're funded based on our average daily attendance, meaning the average number of our enrollment that attends school each day. So what does this trend mean for Fremont Unified with decreasing enrollment across the state? Well, we're keeping an eye on that at the local level. This year, we were about 4% off our enrollment projections. That was not unique to Fremont. Across Alameda County, almost every district was 3 to 6% off their enrollment projections, meaning that they were 3 to 6% below their enrollment projections. As you look at the slide in front of you, you'll notice a significant decrease of over 2,300 students at the elementary school level. But you need to look at the second line as well, because that number is drastic, in part because 1,400 of our elementary school students, and again, I'm using numbers, but roughly 1,400 of our students enrolled in our elementary virtual academy. We did see about 1,300 students in a decreased enrollment from what we anticipated, and that does carry a significant fiscal impact for us. We'll continue to watch that very closely, and we'll continue to see how much of that may have been due to COVID-19, returning to campus, concerns around health and safety, or how much of that will be an ongoing and existing trend. As a way to monitor that, most other school districts across the state utilize a demographer. SchoolWorks is the demographer that most recently completed a report that was presented to our Board of Education in the last meeting. And the demographers look at a broad range of things, from birth rates, and they also monitor what our generation rates are, which means based on the housing area development, whether it's high density housing, single family dwelling, what our generation rate is for those housing areas. Let's analyze what our capture rate is. meaning of the school-age students within Fremont Unified School District's boundaries, how many of them come to Fremont Unified School District programs. With the recent census being released, we are still awaiting some of the more detailed information from the census, and we'll get an even more in-depth picture of those trends. As you can see on the screen in front of you, estimating a continued decline in enrollment from 2022 all the way through 2028. We're hoping that that may flatten out sooner, and that even at some point it may come up to a balanced increase or slight increase in enrollment year over year, because that can be a healthy thing. For Fremont Unified School District schools, community members, we have actually been able to not feel the same decline in enrollment that most other districts in the Bay Area have felt the last 6 or 8 years. In large part because we have such successful programs, such an engaged community, and a successful school district. There are a few other communities that were able to hold off those declines in enrollment, and even those school districts are seeing the decline that we're starting to see as well. As we look at the fiscal implications of that, one of the things that we'll be looking at is our budget. To get some background on our budget, I think it's important to note that around this time last year, Alameda County office was recommending that we cut nearly $18 million from our budget. We worked really hard from the beginning of last year to address our budget issues. The county recognized that work, saw some of the adjustments that we were making, and reduced their recommendation for us. And last spring, we cut nearly $8 million from our program. Those cuts, along with other one-time funds that came from the state and federal government, as well as some unspent dollars due to not having our schools open, increased our ending fund balance from $23.7 million to $44.8 million, which is a good thing. When we closed on last year, our ending fund balance again went up by $32.4 million. And as you can imagine, those are significant funds, but they are attributed to many reasons. For example, we purchased less consumables when schools were closed. We utilized less energy because our schools were closed last year. And so many of those savings are one time, thus our ending fund balance will go up as we close out the books. Additionally, we received a significant amount of support from state and federal government agencies. And all of these things, in addition to the reductions in programs, services, and staffing, have helped us to really shift our fiscal picture to a much healthier position from where we were a year ago. The one-time funding that we received, things like our ESSER relief dollars or our ELOG expanded learning opportunity grant dollars, require plans that have to be approved by the board and sent forward to the California Department of Education to outline how we're utilizing these one-time dollars to support student learning. And a phrase that I don't really enjoy, which is called learning loss. We like to refer to it as unfinished learning, and we'll continue to focus on that target as we support our students both academically and socially and emotionally. So our next steps, we're going to be awaiting the governor's January budget proposal, which we should have right after we come back from the winter break. And we'll attend a conference in Sacramento to hear the fine details of that. And then we will wait for the May revision of that budget, because from January through May, there's a lot of political action that takes place and the legislative process happens. And then in June, the state adopts their budget for the year. I will say that the Legislative Analyst's Office has already released a comprehensive summary outlining that the state is far ahead of revenue projections. And the Legislative Analyst's Office, is actually predicting that we may see increased funding in the next school year, 22-23, and the year beyond that as well. We are cautiously optimistic that that will be the case. Funds will come down from the state in a way that allows us to have some flexibility to support the expansion of programs and to support with the recruitment and retention of the best and the brightest staff for our students and our community. Part of that happens through our negotiations process, and we are in negotiations with all of our bargaining units right now. Again, we'll also be looking at our fiscal condition to address high need facility areas. And we'll also be looking outside the facility standpoint to look at our state learning assessments and our local learning assessments through programs like iReady and other programs that we use where we may have a need for more intensive support to meet the needs of our students. Those needs are going to vary greatly from an academic perspective and a social emotional perspective. We went through a significant time period where students were not receiving in-person instruction. And despite the tremendous efforts of our staff, both classified and certificated, and I believe one of the most comprehensive distance learning programs in the Bay Area, there are still impacts from that we need to address. Those are academic, and they're also social, emotional, and behavior impacts. That being said, we're meeting our students where they are, differentiating the things that they need, offering appropriate intervention. And we talked earlier in the presentation about some of the hallmarks for those things: social emotional learning, additional counseling services. And this is a great opportunity to recognize and thank your classified and certificated staff and administrators at your local school if you haven't had the chance to do so. We have a lot of energy from our students coming back, a lot of emotion from our students, as well as families. As a parent of a freshman this year and a sixth grader this year, I can certainly speak to the emotion that my own kids have brought towards returning to in-person instruction. And our staff have been doing a great job of meeting our students where they are and adjusting for what their needs are. Additionally, we're going to continue to focus on our improved outcomes for equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we've been talking about those things through the adoption of new materials, a set of novels from a more diverse perspective. And we're excited about the work that our instructional services team and our curriculum instruction team are doing to lead that effort side by side and shoulder to shoulder with our teachers at our school sites. Things that we're working on as well that are just a reality for Fremont Unified as they are for many other school districts. We are impacted by a statewide teacher and staffing shortage. Been in development for 6 or 8 years across the entire state. Coming out of the pandemic, that most certainly has been intensified. And we're also seeing that for some of our classified positions as well. You'll see later in the presentation, if you're interested, we might have an opportunity for you. Perhaps if you have your bachelor's degree and you're curious about how you might be able to help out in the classroom, there's some things we can talk about in terms of how you might be able to become a substitute teacher and what further steps you might need to take. Or if that's not an area of interest, we have a broad range of classified positions that don't require a credential where you may be able to help Fremont Unified in substituting and filling in for positions where we are either having a vacant position or we need a short-term substitute. As I mentioned on the previous slide, adjusting to different levels of learning and the impacts from distance learning. And I talked a little bit earlier about some of the social emotional impacts of that, the behavioral impacts. I also want to extend my thanks to our school resource officers and our SRO program. We've had a number of different things that have surfaced as we've come back to school this year. And our SRO team has been great when needed at stepping up to address those things. We did receive some questions from our community for the town hall about what things are safe or unsafe and maybe happening at schools. What I would encourage any of our parents or guardians or community members to do if they have a question about school safety is to reach out to the site administrator for that school site and ask them the questions about what's going on. They have a great pulse of what's going on the campus. And you can also reach out to us at the district office level. I do my very best to respond to every parent email within 24 to 48 hours. I may on occasion refer that email to one of the other district level administrators who can offer more timely and direct support. But I enjoy hearing from our community, whether it's questions, concerns, compliments. That engagement is important to me. Please feel free to reach out to your school sites or to our administration at the district office. I am very grateful for all the work that's gone in to keep our schools safe. And I think that we have a comprehensive program and approach to keeping our students and our staff safe on a regular basis. We also talked about our increased social emotional learning, our counselors, and our interventions. Those are great places to celebrate. Another area obviously related to the pandemic is that Fremont Unified, like many school districts, have become a micro public health agency. We're not really offering guidance or rules for COVID-19 responses. We're taking that guidance from the state and the county and applying it to our schools. We've had to hire a large number of contact tracers. We've had to hire additional staff to make sure we can keep up with vaccine mandates and testing requirements. As you heard earlier, when we have a positive case, we have staff within Fremont Unified School District and through a contract service that help us with contact tracing. There's already a requirement in place for staff to be fully vaccinated or be tested weekly. And we have staff helping to monitor that testing. We also, as I mentioned earlier, have a comprehensive PCR testing at every school site once a week across all of our school sites. That's a large scale testing operation, and we're grateful for the staff from Fremont Unified that's working to put those together. We worked very hard to receive an $800,000 grant to support those efforts. And we've also been grateful for the support of our community partners. We've been able to offer vaccine clinics through the partnerships with Howlers, Bay Area Community Health, Safeway, Washington Hospital, and many others. One of the questions that has come forward is about the statewide vaccine mandates. I want to reiterate the information we have at the moment is really only based on the press conference the governor held, I believe, back in October. And what we have from that press conference is the governor's framework. That framework is that the state will be implementing a vaccine mandate once the vaccine is cleared by the FDA for full use. And it's divided into two groups or two age groups. So the first age group would be 7th graders through 12th graders. For that age group, once the vaccine is fully authorized and no longer in emergency use status for all the students in that age range, then the next semester that vaccine mandate would come into effect. I believe currently we are still in emergency use authorization stages for all students 15 and under. So it is a bit challenging to know exactly when that will come to fruition. And again, we only have the governor's announcement at the press conference. We haven't seen the formal regulations or the legislative process behind implementing that vaccine mandate. It's obviously something that we're keeping a close eye on, and we'll continue to do that moving forward to make sure that our community is informed of accurate information as timely as possible. In the celebration is we've been able to significantly increase the amount of AP test offerings this year for our students. And we're also hosting SATs within Fremont Unified Schools for the first time in, I believe, 15 to 18 years. So that's also something that is exciting development for our community. And I don't want to overshadow the important work that we've done from the fiscal side. Improving our fiscal condition, while much of that is helped by the state funds, work locally to try and address the needs that we need to. And improving our fiscal picture within a 12-month period has been a lot of hard work, and I'm grateful that we've been able to do that. Again, highlighting that we're currently in negotiations with our labor groups, and we know that we want to do things to help our employees and to help recruit and retain the best employees for Fremont Unified. Additionally, we've been able to set aside funds that support our textbook adoptions. Again, a very important part of improving our equity and diversity outcomes as we look at the tools that we use for instruction. years, we've had to push back textbook adoptions because of fiscal constraints. Opportunity is in front of us to update many of these curricular areas. And again, our CNI team, with the support of the school sites and the staff there, have been doing a great job of moving that forward. Please keep your eye out for messages from our team and information on our website, because as we do look at adoptions, we publish those materials and provide an opportunity for the community to provide input. And last but not least, on this page, I just want to share from a selfish perspective. As we return to campus, I've been able to conduct multiple site visits. As I mentioned earlier, I'm at about 36 site visits so far this year, with more to come. And those site visits are so critically important because they allow me to see firsthand, what are our students doing? What do our staff members need? What are our community members saying? And being on campus, that's where you can really see what is the culture of a campus? What is the climate of a campus? It helps me learn how I can integrate myself into the fabric that is our Fremont community and the fabric that is Fremont Unified School District. You can see, as demonstrated on the picture here, this was a transitional kindergarten class at Blakeow. I think this is the first week of school. And my two new friends were working with Legos, engaged in great conversation. They were kind enough to let me join, tell me about what they were building, even tell me about the pizza shapes on their masks. And it was just a great opportunity to see through the eyes of our students. And whether that's happening in a transitional kindergarten classroom for me, or whether it was my visit last week to Irvington High School to see their production of A Wrinkle in Time and see the hard work that the performers were doing, the stagecraft members were doing, the technical crew was doing. Examples of being on the sites, being with the students, learning from the community, that as I engage in my second year as superintendent, my first year with students back on campus, where I feel like I've really been able to learn more about Fremont Unified and identify how I can help as a servant leader of this organization to continue the success that's been here before my arrival. So with that, again, invite you to join us in Fremont Unified School District in the capacity that feels comfortable for you. We are recruiting for representatives for our many committees. We would love to see you look at Fremont Unified as a career destination, either short-term or long-term. And if going through the presentation tonight, you like some of the pictures or they look familiar, please feel free to join us on social media to see more and more of what's happening on a regular basis. We utilize our Facebook feed for Fremont Unified, a Twitter feed for Fremont Unified. And if you're interested in seeing some of the site visits that I'm making or other things that are happening across the district, I share a lot of that on my own Twitter account at CJ Kamek. You can follow along to see what's happening there as well. And in closing, I just want to thank you very much for joining us. I want to thank our Associate Superintendent and our Assistant Superintendent for joining us, as well as Mr. Zamora, who is behind the scenes with our production of streaming this presentation online and recording it. And he has been there with us the last 3 days. So we appreciate all the work that goes on behind the scenes there. And as we close, if there was something that you wanted to see addressed tonight that wasn't, I encourage you to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to engage with you in conversation or email communication to see how I can help support addressing the question that you might have. As we wrap up this week, moving into next week, if there are things that we can do, let us know. As we get to next week, my wish for all of you is a joyous holiday season where you can have time doing the things that fill your heart with happiness and being around the people that bring you joy. I wish you all the very best. Thank you for being with us this evening, and hopefully I'll see you around our school site soon. Take good care.